If I told you that these self-love rituals would not bring you happiness, would you believe me? Modern self-love preached by influencers, wellness professionals, and some psychologists is incomplete. The problem isn't with the concept itself. The error lies in its isolation from a missing piece. A piece that eluded us for so long, while hiding in plain sight. I'll break down this missing piece into a simple two-part equation. The first part I call your iterated self. What is your iterated self? Let's think about an elephant, a baby elephant. Let's call it Sam. When Sam was 2, he used to love swimming and playing in the sand with his family. He enjoyed playing in the water and building sand castles. When he was 10, he still loved swimming, but he enjoyed spending time with his friends more. Sam stayed up all night playing, touching, and using his trunk to communicate with his friends. When Sam turned 20, he fell in love with another elephant. He moved from playing with his friends to just playing with her. Sam's iterated self is Sam when he was 2, when he was 10, and when he was 20, and him in the next 10 years and the next 20 years. It is Sam repeated every single day across time. You see, Sam evolved, adapted, and grew with each passing day. It is Sam represented in the past, present, and future. To understand the concept of iterated self, you have to understand the concept of time. Know that you're moving across it non-stop, and that reality is the truest reality. Now, I know you're thinking, how does this explain why self-love is incomplete? To do this, first I need to explain the second part of the equation. This part delves deeper into how your mind works. I call it your level of perception. Let's go back to Sam and the elephants. A long time ago, far away in a kingdom called Aljor, there lived 3 great animals: the lizards, the elephants, and the chimps. The kingdom was blessed with fertile lands, long trees, and warm seasons. The animals created a shelter for the rain out of trees and fire from stones. They planted grains, reared livestock, and stacked up food for the coming seasons. There was peace and prosperity in the land. Until one day, a dragon appeared. It started to burn their crops, eat their livestock, and destroy their homes. But something odd happened every time the dragon attacked. During the attacks, all the lizards ran to safety and prioritized survival. All the elephants ensured their loved ones were safe, even risking their own lives to do so. But the chimps did something unique. The chimps began to study the dragon, mapped its movement, how frequently it attacked, and its vulnerabilities. Eventually, the chimps designed arrows that killed the dragon, and the kingdom was peaceful again. Our level of perception could be described as how we see the world, what is important to us, what we focus on, and what we prioritize. How each animal reacted to the dragon represents 3 levels of perception humans possess. It also represents our evolution from each. The lizard thinks about safety, which is crucial to humans. This is the sensory level of perception. This is also called our lizard brain. The lizard prioritizes fight or flight responses, survival, and whatever it entails. Food, water, shelter, and sexual drive, which is tied to our need to reproduce. At the sensory level of perception, there is no understanding of the concept of time. What matters now is all that matters. The past and future are irrelevant. The elephant thinks about the safety of loved ones. The elephant represents an evolution from the lizard brain and the innate nature of humans, who also take care of their loved ones. We live in groups, we have families, we exchange goods, and we reciprocate feelings. We also compete for resources and social status. This is the emotional level of perception. The chimp represents a unique ability humans have: the ability to create, understand, and manipulate abstractions. The ability to solve problems. The chimps imagined a reality where the dragon was dead, an alternate reality. Using logic and action, they created it. This is the logical level of perception. Allow me to make this clear. Self-love is a prescription to mitigate threats to mental and emotional well-being. The lizard and elephant levels of perception are a short-term strategy to deal with these threats. Only the chimp level of perception can be relied upon for medium to long-term threat facing. This is because it understands the concept of logic and time. The elephant brain understands time but divorced from logic, falls into wishful thinking. This does nothing to change reality. Modern self-love emphasizes the importance of valuing one's well-being, physical, emotional, self-esteem, and happiness. You could say implicitly that happiness is the goal of self-love. You could argue that whatever rituals you perform, as self-love is meant to bring happiness. A good question would be, what constitutes happiness? What does happiness mean to each person? It certainly isn't a one-size-fits-all. What did happiness mean when you were 5? What made you happy at 10? If I asked what would make you happy now, what would that be? And what are the odds that at every point in your life, it's the same? What are the odds that the 5-year-old you would want the same things as the 10-year-old you? Or you at 50? Very unlikely, I imagine. But you have to realize that that is still you, your iterated self, you across time, and that reality is not going to change. Ask yourself, what does happiness mean to you now? Try to answer that, but this time, take into account your iterated self. If you attempt to answer that question, and you perceive reality using only your lizard brain, you will be susceptible to the whims of your basic instincts. Sexual drive, hunger, and thirst. What this may look like is an insatiable lust for food, alcohol, sex, and perhaps money to meet those ends. If your level of perception is like the elephant's, you might isolate yourself in a bubble of your own emotions. Your decisions would be at best arbitrary. These levels of perception are incredibly useful, just like in the lizard-elephant story, but short-lived, because it does nothing to fully deal with the threat in the long run. Eventually, the dragon will return. The lizard and elephant levels of perception are automatic, instinctive, and easy to fall under. It doesn't require a conscious effort to perceive the world at that level. But the chimp brain requires conscious effort. If you attempt to answer that question using only your chimp brain and isolate it from your lizard and elephant brains, that self-love is still incomplete. It may result in prioritizing your career at the expense of your emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. Isolating any of the 3 brains or considering only 2 out of the 3 is a suboptimal level of perception when faced with the reality of your iterated self. Just like in the animal story, all 3 levels are important and have to be considered when dealing with threats, not divided or isolated. To complete self-love, you must take into account your iterated self and all 3 levels of perception. Sometimes emotions and senses are a consequence of logic. Self-love is complete when it constitutes treatment that not only benefits you, but your loved ones and your goals simultaneously across time. The highest level of perception is the chimp level of perception. It is the only level of perception that through conscious effort can take into account your iterated self and all 3 levels of perception. Now, I know you might be thinking, how can I tell if my choices are clouded by emotions or my senses? How do I make sure all levels of perceptions are taken into account when making decisions? Well, ask and you shall receive.